Russia and Ukraine, China and Taiwan, Yemen, Iran, North Korea. Did I forget anyone? The globe, perhaps more than any other time since World War II, is a tinderbox ready to explode. Are Biden and Pelosi capable of preventing World War III? We'll talk about that next, but first, as always, we start with our mission. Always remember, God created us for this time and for this place. If we learn this faith, if we live this faith, if we share this faith, what will the next 100 years look like? Join the mission. To be clear, it's not just the fact that there are lots of conflicts occurring around the globe right now, it's also who is engaged in those conflicts in particular. Some significant nations with significant military power, nuclear nations. There are currently 9 nuclear states: China, France, India, Israel, North Korea, Pakistan, Russia, and the United Kingdom and the United States. Keep track of that list as we get into this video. But our question here is, can Biden, Pelosi, and Schumer, are they equipped to prevent World War III from breaking out? Are they mentally capable? Do they have what it takes? And that is assuming that they would be willing to stop it. But that's a whole nother video. I just mentioned it here because it would seem that Pelosi last week on her world tour was single-handedly attempting to start World War III. But more on that later. But first, to deal with the elephant in the room. I know many of you are asking the question, what does Biden or the U.S. have to do with Russia or Ukraine or China or Taiwan or any of these places? Well, perhaps nothing, although personally I am in no way an isolationist, and I hope to clarify that position a bit later. But what is significant here is that China, Russia, and Iran have each found some reason to directly threaten us. So perhaps maybe we are a little bit more involved than we would like to be. Now I know Iran and North Korea are always threatening us. Of course we expect that from them. But Russia and China, that seems to be a little more significant. And it got me wondering if this current group in Washington has what it takes, the character, the fortitude to stare down Putin and Xi. You are familiar with the story last week of Nancy Pelosi's world tour. But buried under that story was this news out of Russia. This is a Newsmax story. On Navy Day, Putin says the United States is the main threat to Russia. Speaking on Russia's Navy Day, Putin made a short speech in which he promised that Russia has the military clout to defeat any potential aggressors. And he's saying this in the context of their new hypersonic cruise missiles. Shortly before the speech, he signed a new 55-page naval doctrine. The main threat to Russia, the doctrine says, is the strategic policy of the USA to dominate the world's oceans and the movement of the NATO military alliance closer towards Russia's borders. Now, remember that as I refer back to this article from Newsweek from a month earlier, from June 25th. Putin ally announces the first city Russia will strike if World War III starts. The first to be hit will be London. Without a doubt, the threat to the world comes from the Anglo-Saxons. He said that the U.S. would then have to tell Western Europe to continue fighting in the cold without food and electricity. Also buried under the Pelosi story was this article from Newsweek. Iran state media warns the U.S. it can build atomic bombs and turn New York into ruins. Iranian state media said in a new video that the country has the ability to turn New York into ruins and hell in case of a hostile act by the U.S. using its intercontinental ballistic missiles, which are designed to deliver nuclear weapons. Don't worry, Iran's nuclear program is only for domestic energy production. Back to Nancy Pelosi's world tour. This is from the Post-Millennial. Japan says Chinese missile drills near Taiwan gave a grave problem, a threat to regional peace. China launched 5 rockets on Thursday that landed off the coast of Okinawa. The Japanese defense minister said China's military escalation created serious threats to Japan's national security and the safety of the Japanese people. So, about a week after these threats, as far as I know, unless I missed it, Biden has not responded to any of these. the only news out of Washington since all of this has been that drone strike in Afghanistan on the leader of that organization that I can't mention here or I'll get dinged. That same organization, Biden told us about a year ago, was defeated. You remember, he said that they were defeated and they were no longer a threat in Afghanistan, so we no longer needed to maintain a presence there. So he left, leaving behind Americans and American military equipment. But you were supposed to forget all about that and celebrate Biden's victorious drone strike. Don't ask any questions about any of these threats. That's why they were all buried in the news. The other big story out of Washington this last week is the passage of this huge climate change legislation. And I have a question. If any of these threats are carried out, would any of these threats have any immediate effect on the climate in New York City? And does this climate legislation that was just passed, does it address that possibility? And I ask this because it seems as though some of these people are only interested in the impact to the environment and not the actual citizens of New York City or America as a whole. Now, of course, the disaster in Afghanistan a year ago emboldened our enemies so they felt assured to make these types of threats. But don't forget about this particular image. Remember that meeting that Biden had with members of the wind industry? Remember when he accidentally revealed his cheat sheet and it had the directions for him to sit? This is from the New York Post. You take your seat. Very specific cheat sheet reminds Biden how to act. President Biden on Thursday inadvertently held up a comically detailed cheat sheet prepared by his staff instructing the gaffe-prone leader of the free world to take your seat. Now, before I go out into left field, let me first ask this, just to be sure. Is this kind of thing normal? I don't know. I don't work at the White House. Did Trump have someone telling him when to sit? I'm serious, because I would like to know who is telling the president to sit. Is that something that you say to a grown man? Obviously not. That's something you say to a dog. So who is it that's holding the president's leash? And if I'm asking this question here on YouTube, maybe Putin and Xi realize that now is the time to act. Now is the time to be making these kinds of threats. So we've witnessed the president publicly being told to sit, the U.S. being publicly threatened by China, Russia, and Iran, and the president completely ignoring all of it. Does this make the president look weak? And is this why he gave that order for that drone strike? Did Biden pull a trick out of Bush's hat? Instead of dealing head-on with the threats, is he attempting to save face by pulling a Bush? Does this drone strike rehabilitate his image? Does he now appear to be a tough guy? And will this drone strike cause Russia, China, and Iran to think twice about threatening the U.S. again? Is this the new procedure for dealing with foreign threats, drone strikes? Somehow I don't think that strategy will work. I, for one, wish that he would take these threats a bit more seriously. God forbid what might happen if he doesn't. Remember, a good and well-ordered society depends entirely on good and virtuous people. It doesn't just happen by accident. But as true as this is, it's unfortunately not the manner in which progressives like Biden and Pelosi govern. They think that a good and well-ordered society is created through laws and government programs, like this climate change legislation. That's their answer to everything. Pass another law, create another government program, and this is evident whenever there is an international crisis. All they know how to do is to appeal to the UN or any other international body and ask for sanctions. And that never works. It didn't work for the Bushes, and it's not going to work for this group. Sometimes the answer to a problem is not another government program, or in this case, sanctions. Sometimes the answer is to act virtuously, in this case, courageously. But modern politicians don't believe in the necessity of courage. They just hide behind large, powerful militaries. They don't need to be courageous. But as every schoolboy knows, it doesn't matter how small the bully is or how big his victim is. What matters is courage. If the victim is scared, the bully has already won. The bully will be successful. Because it's not a question of muscle. First and foremost, it's mental. A courageous man does not necessarily have to fight. He's able to stare down his enemies. He's able to win the mental match. We saw this with Reagan and with Trump. But unfortunately, this person currently occupying the White House doesn't seem to understand that. He completely ignored all of these threats. A president's job is to defend the nation and the citizens, up to and including military force if necessary. How can we expect this man to stand up to bullies? How can we expect him to stand up while his handlers are busy telling him to sit down?